welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe, and it is Friday. It might be afternoon where you are, it might be night, or it might be first thing in the morning. I have no idea where you're listening and watching from. However, we have from Canada today telling stories for children. We have the wonderful, the amazing, the man with the biggest library in the whole world, in fact, the biggest library probably in the universe, or the cosmos, or the galaxy, or anywhere else that you care to, black holes even. And we have the amazing, the wonderful Norman Perrin. Put your hands together and welcome him. The stage is yours, Norman.
Go Norman. Heck with Norman.
That sounds wonderful, John. Gee, I hope to meet that guy sometime. But yes, I do have a few books, and there are a few stories in the books, and those stories like to get out. You know, they don't like being stuffed into a room or even a bag. And that's what my first story is all about. What would happen if the stories were kept hidden away? Well, once upon a time, in the country of Japan, there was a little boy who loved to hear stories. He heard them from the old servant every single day, and he could never, ever get enough of the stories. But you know what? He never retold the stories. He never shared them with other people. In fact, all the other children knew that the old man was a good storyteller, and they say, "Would you tell me a story that he told you?" They asked the little boy. "Later," he said, "let's go play soccer." So the stories, once they were told, had to have a home. And where did they go? They went to live inside an old leather bag that was hanging on the wall in the boy's room. Now, in that bag, there was lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of stories, all jammed up together. The same way that any storyteller has stories that are all jammed up inside their heads, right, Bubba? So, the stories wanted to get out, but the boy wouldn't tell the stories. And so, years passed. The bag was getting fuller and fuller and fuller until the day came when the stories in the bag overheard the young boy, now a young man. He was preparing to get married, and he was going to go on a trip on his horse to the next village, and there he would be marrying a beautiful young woman. And he was so happy. The servant was helping them get dressed and do all the things necessary for the journey. And the story said he's going to be very, very happy. And he's going to completely forget all about us stuffed inside this bag. So we're going to do something about that. Very well, said one of the stories. I know exactly what I'm going to do. On his journey, he's going to see a pool of water. He's going to be very thirsty because it's a hot, hot day. And there'll be dust on the road, and the dust will be in his throat, and he'll drink that pool from that pool of water. But I will make that pool of water deadly poison. One drop of it in his throat, and he'll turn purple, blue, yellow, green, red, and he'll die. Said another story. That's a good plan. That's an excellent plan. But what if he doesn't drink the water? I have another plan. I am going to create a berry bush right beside the pathway. It'll be full of sweet, tasty berries. He will not resist being able to wanting to eat one of those berries. And if he eats one single berry, he'll turn purple, red, green, yellow, blue, plaid, and he'll die horribly. Oh, said another story. Is that so? Well, what if he misses the water, does not eat the berries? When he comes to the village, I know what I will do. He will get off the horse to step upon a bag of rice husks, and that is to ensure his prosperity. But if he steps on that bag, I will put a poisoned needle in it, and that will be the end of him. In the stories all laughed to one another. But then another voice came up and said, well, what if he does not drink the water? What if he does not eat the berries? What if his foot misses the bush, the poison pin in the bag? I know what I will do. I will create a snake that will crawl and bite him on the neck, and then that will be the end of him. And the storytellers and all the stories in the bag laughed, because how could he miss all of these dangers? Well, you know who happened to be right near the bag when the plot of the storytellers was being made? It was the old servant. And because he knew so many stories, he understood their language. Anybody who tells lots of stories, or maybe even just one, understands the language of stories. And he realized that his young master was in great danger. And so he went to his master and he said, oh, master, I know that you are going on your journey later today, but please take me with you. Well, you're an old man, said the young man, and you'll slow me down. No, I won't, said the old man. Please, let me take you. I want to see you on your day of happiness. And so the young man said, yes, you may come along with me. And so the preparations were finished. They set out. And they went down the road. The horse was clip-clopping along, and it was a hot day, and there was dust in the air. And the young man saw a pool of water by the roadside. And he said, take this gourd, go over there and get me some sweet water that I may wash the dust from my throat. Well, that was the first danger. And the old man thought to himself, I must be very, very careful. And so he took the gourd and very slowly he walked over to the pool and he bent down and he filled up the gourd with some water. And very slowly he came back and walked back, and the young man impatiently cried, come on, hurry up, hurry up. And the old man pretended to stumble and the water splashed all over the road. Now the young man didn't have any water to drink, but the first danger was past. The young man said, go and get me some more water. No, said the old man. We are already late. Let us go on. And so they went down the road. And soon they saw a berry bush covered with luscious looking red berries. And the young man said, here, go and get some of those berries for me. They will wash some of the dust from my throat, and I'm hungry. The old man went over slowly. He picked one berry. He looked at it and he put it in his hand. He picked another berry. He looked at that one too. Well, come on over with my berries. And so the old man went over. But just before he could hand the berries to the young man, he tripped, he stumbled, and the berries went scattering in the dust. And that was the second danger that was passed. And so they went down the road. The young man was very upset. But there was the village. There were all the people gathered. There was a young girl in her finest clothing holding a cushion that was filled with rice husks that would ensure his prosperity in his marriage. And she placed it down, and the young man got off his horse. But before he could step on the bush, the old man rushed forward, grabbed hold of the bush, and threw the bag and threw it into the bushes. And the young man fell flat on his face in front of everybody. The young man got up, and some of the people were doing their best and some not succeeding. They did not want to laugh, but there was a few bits of titters and laughs. And he said to the old man, go from my sight and never let me see you again. The old man left, but he hid in a forest by the edge of the village, and he listened to the sounds of the people celebrating. And when the sounds of the celebrating finished, he knew that the young man and his new bride would be going to their dwelling where they would spend their first night together. And he ran over to that, and there in the shadows he hid, and the young man was in the bed. The young woman was there too. There was a very faint light, and by that faint light you could see one of the shadows move from a corner. It went across the floor, it went up onto the bed, and the old man had a knife, and he ran and he jumped on the bed and he struck. And the young man woke up. He says, "Old man." And what did he see? He saw the old man with a knife in his hand. "Old man, I'm sorry, I what I did, but the young, don't hurt me." The old man says, "I'm not here to hurt you, young master. I'm here to help you." And he pointed out, "Look down." And there was the snake cut into two. Soon it was dying, and soon it was still. And the old man told the story about the stories that were not retold and how they had plotted. And the young man listened and he heard. And so, when the young man had his first child, and what did he do when he had his babe in his arms on the very first day? He told it a story. And as soon as that story was told, it was freed from that bag. And from that day on, the young man told that little child, as it grew up, many, many stories. And soon the bag was empty, but the stories were free. And now they have been heard by many people and retold by many people. They will never, ever be stuffed in a bag again. For the place where the stories truly live is in the heart of the teller and the heart of the listener. And I like to think that the stories in the books behind me are just waiting for their turn to be told, as I just told the story to you. Thank you. What do you think? Now, that is a bit of a gruesome type tale. I know there's murder, there's mayhem, and we don't even talk about the beautiful young woman in the story, but that's for another time. I was wondering what stories to tell this time. And so now that we have the story bag out, I reached into the bag and I pulled out this story. He says, I says, "Hello, story. You're ready to be told a story?" He says, "Yeah, I'm ready to be told." He says, "Okay, that's great. I've been waiting for you." Yes, I talk to my stories. And they talk back to me. Well, once upon a time and a long time ago, John's heard this story already, but I hope you haven't. There was a farmer who lived about just north of London. And that farmer, well, the man who owned that land, he paid his rent every single year. And every single year, the old man would come by, pick it up, and it would be paid in sometimes in potatoes, sometimes in grains, or sometimes the odd coin. But eventually, one day, the old landowner died and passed away. And his son, who lived in London, had never paid any attention to the farm. But when he found out that he had a land to the north of London, he decided to go and take an inspection. And he looked at all the farms and he's heard about how much he was being paid in rent and this, that, and the other thing. He says, "My father has never, ever put up the rents. These farmers have been robbing him blind. I'm going to make these farms pay for me." And so he went to the one farmer and he said, "Okay, then, you've been paying 10% rent of your produce, but now it's going to be an even 50%. I'm going to take half of everything you grow." And the old farmer looked at the young man and he says, "That's not fair." "Yes, but I own the land and you pay me the rent." The old man said, fine, 50-50, half of the crop. Okay, then, what do you want? Top half or bottom half? Now, I told you, the young man had lived in London most of his life. And why he broke up with his father, well, that's a story for another time. And the old farmer looked at the young man and realized he didn't know a darn thing about growing anything. He says, well, tops or bottoms? And the old young man thought, not knowing what to say, he just simply, I'll take the top. Fine, said the farmer. You come in the fall and you'll get your fair share of the harvest. And so what did the farmer plant that spring? He planted potatoes. Oh, there's fields and fields of potatoes. And I know what it's like to take care of potato fields. With a hoe, you go up and down, you try and get all the potato bugs, you do this, you do that, lots of work. But in the fall, there's the rich harvest of beautiful potatoes. And so when the young man came in and he saw that the fields were covered in these beautiful green bushy plants, he thought, I'm going to get so much when I get my share. But in the fall, when the crop came in, the potatoes tops were worthless. And where was the real gold? The gold was underground, hidden. And so the young man got nothing but brown stalks, and the old farmer, well, he got a fine crop of potatoes. Well, he was really upset. And so he went to the old farmer and he says, old man, you fooled me, but I'm still going to take half. I'm going to still take half of everything you grow, but this time I'm going to take the bottoms. Sure, says the old farmer. You'll get what you deserve. And so what did he plant in the spring? The next year, he planted wheat. And the wheat grew and grew and grew. And the young man came and he saw the crop and he says, what a scrawny looking plants. I bet you the good stuff is underground like they were last year. But when the harvest came, the old man got a fine crop of golden wheat, and the young man got nothing but roots and stubble and roots. And he looked at that and he was mad. He says, okay, old man, you fooled me once. You fooled me twice, but you're not going to fool me again. You know what? This time, I'm going to up the rent to 100%. I'm going to take the tops and I'm going to take the bottoms. And that will make up for the last 2 years. I haven't gotten a single thing. Okay, said the old man. Next year, you come to the farm and you'll get what you deserve. And so what did the old farmer plant the next spring? He went up and down the fields. He poked holes in the ground. He put the seeds in and covered them up and he watered them. And up from that fields came row upon row of corn, or they call it maize in different places, because corn is the old name for wheat as well. You know, it's funny about words. They're like stories. They wander all over the place, and they change their meanings when they go to different places. But back in England, that fine crop of maize grew tall, tall, tall. And upon the stalks came these, in the middle of the plant were cobs of maize. And so the young man took the tops, which are the tassels. He got the roots, which were the bottoms. And in the middle, the old farmer got what was left over, cobs of maize. And he got a beautiful crop. And he filled his barn once again. And as for the young man, He got sick and tired of farming, and he just says, "Old man, do what you want. I'll go back to the old ways my father did." And that's the way it went. From that time on, the young man got his proper fair share of the land, because that is what he deserved. And what the farmer got, he got contentment. And what did I get? Why, I got this story. And I've got the top, the bottom, and the middle of the story. Just like that canny old man did. Thank you. I love, yeah, that this story is one of those ones that is properly traveling. Now, let's let's travel back. I'm sorry, let's travel over. We'll leave England. We'll go to the water's edge. Am I a bit loud? No, I just saw the.
No, you're perfect, Norman.
Okay.
I was just
Because you
leaving
were
England. I
leaving
was just
England.
flying away from England.
Okay, then you fly away.
And I second that
Anyway,
emotion.
we cross the ocean. We're going to go over Newfoundland, and we're going to come up the Gaspésie. And the Gaspésie is old Quebec. And up the Gaspésie, there are villages all along the Great St. Lawrence River inland. And one of these villages was on a river. And that river, why, it provided the town with water for their mill. It gave them water for the farm, for the people, sweet water to drink, because at that point, the St. Lawrence was salt water. And times were good, but not quite as good as they could be, because you see, every spring, the deep snows of long winter would melt. And when they melted, they come roaring down the riverbed and wash out any bridge that the people built. It's because they traveled from one side of the river to the other along their way. And so they decided that they needed a good, strong bridge. The wooden bridges they had kept on building had kept on being washed away. And so the people got together. They got the padre. They got the Mother Superior from the local convent, and they all sat and they planned and they plotted. They said, "Well, we have stone. There's plenty of rock around here, but we don't have anybody who can build a bridge. We don't have the money for it. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" Well, there's this young woman who stepped up and he says, "I have an idea. Why don't you go to the big hairy man in the woods?" The big hairy, they all gasped. He says, "You can't do that." Well, she said, "Why not? He's big, he's strong, he's a bit hairy, but he can build that bridge for us." Well, no one wanted to be the one to go to that big hairy man in the village. There were stories told about him, and nobody wanted to go. But the young woman said, "I will go." And so she went off. She went into the forest. She followed the river, and there was the dwelling of the big hairy man. He says, "Hello, hello, big hairy man." And from the hut there came a growling sound. "Who is it that calls me when no one ever calls?" And the young woman says, "Could you come out? I'd like to ask you a favor." The big hairy man came out. And boy, when he came out, first of all, out of the doorway came a hand, a big, huge, hairy hand. And then behind it was followed a big, hairy forearm. And then behind the big, hairy forearm, there was a big, hairy chest. And then the head came out, and the other arm, and the breast of the big, hairy man came out. Long, hairy legs, muscles everywhere, and he stood up. And the young girl looked up and up and up. And the hairy man looked down and says, "What do you want?" "We need a bridge across the river," said the young girl. "But we don't have the money, but we have the stone. And will you build that bridge for us because you're strong?" The big hairy man says, "I can do that for you, but there's a price." "Price?" said the young girl. "What's the price?" "The price is this. I am lonely. I'm very, very lonely here in the woods. None of you ever come to visit except you. And I know you're going to leave right away. I want somebody to stay with me and be my companion. So this is my price. I'll build your bridge for you. It'll be a good, strong bridge, and it will stand. But the first living thing that crosses that bridge is going to be my companion in the woods," said the big hairy man. And so the young girl said, "I got to go ask the people if that's okay." So she went back to the town. She told them about the big hairy man saying yes, but the price. And the mother superior said, "We can pay his price." And she smiled. You can tell that she had an idea, but I'm not going to tell you what the idea is until it shows up properly in the story. So we can't rush things. So the young girl went back to the big hairy man. She said, "Okay, we agree. You build the bridge and you get what you want." "Great," said the great hairy man. And he got up, he cracked his knuckles, he stretched his arms, his muscles flexed, and he followed the young girl back to the town. And as soon as he got there, he started working with his big fists. He smashed the rocks in just the right size and shape. And then he hefted those rocks and he built the bridge. All that spring and all that summer he worked, and the bridge was slowly forming across the river. The framework was set of wood upon which the rocks was built by him, and the arches were made. And finally, in the fall, when the first leaves were turning yellow, red, and gold, and the people wanted the harvest to take across the bridge into the next town, why, the bridge was ready. Oh, it was a magnificent bridge. You could see that it would stand forever. And on the far side was the big, hairy man waiting for his payment. There was wagons of potatoes and maize and what was the third one? And wheat on the other side, but nobody wanted to cross that bridge. Nobody wanted to spend the rest of their lives in the forest with the big hairy man. But out of the convent came Mother Superior, and in her arms she had the cat that had been living in the convent, a big, huge black cat. Nobody wanted the black cat, but the Mother Superior had taken care of it. And then she walked to the bridge, and there was the big hairy man on the other side. And the Mother Superior held the cat, petted it once or twice, whispered in its ear. I do not know what she whispered in its ear. Maybe she blew into it, I don't know. But suddenly the cat leapt out of her arms, ran across that bridge, and ran and leapt into the arms of the big hairy man. And there he cradled in his arms like a big black fur cat. And he looked at the cat, and the cat looked at the big hairy man, and the cat wiggled a little bit, curled its tail around its whiskers, and went to sleep and began to purr. And the big hairy man looked at the cat, and then suddenly his chest began to shake, and quiver, and out of him came a big, deep laugh. Ho, 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 ho! And he turned around and he went back into the forest. And you could hear him laughing for miles away, that big ho, ho, ho sound. And so the big hairy man got what he wanted, a companion. The people got what they needed and wanted, a bridge. And so it's been to this very day. And I'm told that if you cross that bridge in that town along the along the St. Lawrence River, you can hear from the forest every now and then a very deep and resonant ho, ho, ho. And that's the story of the bridge of the big hairy man. So, the stories I was looking also about stories, and let's stay in Quebec for a little longer. There's a woman named Natalie Savage Carlson who wrote a series of stories, and one of them is called Jean Labadie's Big Black Dog. Now, the story of Jean Labadie's Big Black Dog is told to this very day. But at the beginning of my story, there was no big black dog. There was a problem. Jean Labadie's chickens were slowly disappearing, one by one. And Jean Labadie thought he knew who it was. It was his neighbor, Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre had a few chickens, but they're poor, scrawny things. He had a barn, but it was fallen down. He had fields, but they were full of weeds. He didn't like to work, but he still needed to eat. And so every so often, a chicken would disappear from among the big, fat chickens that Jean Labadie had. And he went over to his friend and Jean-Pierre. Now, he wasn't going to accuse him of stealing. No, that's not good, because even in the falls, sometimes you needed help with the harvest. Other times, you needed help in other things. It's good to keep good neighbors, because you never knew when they would need their help. No, he had another thing in mind. And he went to Jean-Pierre. He says, "Hey, Jean-Pierre, my friend." "Yes? How's things?" "A little bit of this, a little bit of that," says Jean-Pierre. "What can I do for you, Jean Labadie?" Well, Jean Labadie says, "I've been having a bit of a problem with my chickens. And I finally found a solution. I got myself a big black dog to guard them. And he's a big, fierce animal. He's got long, sharp teeth. And when he's running along, he lifts one paw this way and one paw that way. His eyes roll around and his red tongue hangs out." "Oh, that sounds like a very fearsome dog," says Jean-Pierre. "I'm sure he will protect your chickens very well." "I really expect that," says Jean Labadie. And from that time on, the chickens were safe. None disappeared. But then Jean Labadie went over, his friend Jean-Pierre came over to him. He says, "Jean Labadie, that big black dog of yours, you need to keep him locked up." "What do you mean?" says Jean Labadie. "Well, he's been running along. I could see them in my back field, and I knew it was your dog because he lifted one paw this way, he lifted one paw that way. He had long, sharp teeth. His eyes were rolling, and his tongue hung out to the left." Now, Jean Labadie was in a bind because there was no big black dog. But he says, "Jean-Pierre, I am sorry my dog got out. I'll make sure that he's tied up." "You do that," says Jean-Pierre. And the next day, a chicken disappeared from the barn. Oh, well, at least the chickens weren't disappearing as fast as they did before. Then along came Jean-Pierre, and Jean-Pierre was mad. held up his fist, and there was a cut on it, and it was bleeding. And he said, Jean Labadie, your dog must have gotten loose because he came at me and he bit me in the hand. What? What? He said, how could he bite you in the hand? Yes, I guess there's a bad cut there. But Jean Labadie looked at it and he thought, looks like he slipped with the axe when he's chopping wood. And he had to take one of his best fat, plump chickens and give it to Jean-Pierre as compensation. Now, he said to him, he thought to himself, I've got to get rid of that dog, but now Jean-Pierre says it's for real. I know what. And he went over to Jean-Pierre and he says, look, I'm going to take my big black dog and I am going to take him and I'm going to give him to the people of the woods. They'll take care of him. They got lots of fierce dogs and my dog will be at home with them. And so the dog was taken to the people of the woods, and Jean-Pierre thought, Jean Labadie thought was the end of it. But then Jean-Pierre came over and he said, Jean Labadie, my chickens are being killed by your dog, for he has come back. So Jean Labadie said, my friend, I will make an end of that dog. And so he went into this house and he got his big long barreled gun and he went out with Jean-Pierre and he called out to his big black dog, come here. And he says, Kenya? And he says, Jean-Pierre said, I can see him. His eyes are rolling, his teeth are sharp, his paws lifting one way and the other, and the tongue hangs out to the left side. And when he said that, bang went the gun. There's a cloud of smoke. And Jean Labadie says, that is the end of my poor little dog. And you know what? It must have been the end of that poor dog because no one ever saw the Jean Labadie's big black dog. But from then on, Jean Labadie, who was a very good storyteller, was a little more careful about what stories he told, because sometimes a good story is harder to kill than anything. And that's that story of Jean Labadie's big black dog. Just a second, my throat is a bit on the dry side. I should add some water. I'll be back in a moment.
Are you off swimming, Louis?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, Norman's back now.
I don't know how long until we get there. I don't know. The last time when I listened to someone on Sultan Cafe, and
Okay.
I listened on my way to the car, I went to Oakham.
Well, yeah, this is
And then
probably.
I went to the car, walk all the way to the door, to the pin. Then we are waiting outside for the other ones to go out, and I'm still listening to it. When we're timed, I leave so early, and so for my lessons to start then. And I don't.
That's perfect. We'll finish before your lesson starts. I think it's the last story now, Louis. That was a fantastic story in itself.
Yes, it
I
is.
don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Norman.
Yes, this will be the last story. Now, we've traveled to many places, and I'm going to leave the Gatineaus, and I'm going to go to Russia. And In Russia, we have 3 people going through a forest to the next town. They were a tailor and a wood carver and a scholar, a man of deep wisdom. And it was the forest was deep, their traveling was long, and the night fell before they got out of the forest. And so they built themselves a fire. And they decided they need to sleep for the night, but they need to have one person remain awake to guard for against animals or robbers who may be in the forest. So they built the fire, and the first one who had a turn to keep watch was the wood carver. And so he sat on a log with his tools beside him, and he watched the flames dance around, and it was boring. The time was long, and he decided, why not I do something? And so he took the log and he carved it. He carved it into something, a beautiful woman. And when he was finished, she was gorgeous. But by then it was his turn. His turn was done, and so the next one who took the turn to watch was the tailor. And the tailor sat on a rock and he watched the flames dance, and he saw the a woman of wood carved by the wood carver, but he couldn't take his eyes off her because you see, the wood carver had carved her without any clothes on. And he looked at the statue of the woman with no clothes on, and he looked away and he looked at it. And he says, "Look, I got to make some clothes for her." And so he took some cloth and he made a beautiful dress, a sort of dress that anybody would want to wear. And he put the dress, and finally, when he was finished, he put the dress upon the woman of the statue, and there she stood, wooden and dressed. And while his turn was over, he went to sleep. The last one, the scholar, the man of deep wisdom, he sat on the rock and he watched the flames dance, and he looked over at the wooden statue of the woman dressed in clothing, and he was bored too. Now, he was a teacher, and so he says, I know what I will do. I will teach this wooden woman everything I know. Now, he taught a lot of blockheads in his time, so it was no problem for him to teach the wooden woman. And bit by bit by bit, why, she learned how to speak and think. And by the time the sun rose, there was the most beautiful woman speaking in deep discourse with a man of deep wisdom with a young woman. And when the sun rose, they were all awake, and they all saw the young woman, and they all wanted to marry her. They all wanted her to marry them. And they began to dispute with one another. I should she should marry me, said the wood carver. There would be no woman without my work. Yes, but said the tailor, what is a woman without being beautifully dressed? She should marry me. And the scholar says, but I'm the one who taught her to speak. I am the one who taught her to think. She should marry me. And they were still disputing when through the forest, because it was a pathway used by many, there came an old man. And the young old man heard the sounds of the dispute. And he came over and he listened for a moment and to each one tell their story. And when they'd finally quietened down, he asked one single question. He says, has anyone asked the young woman what she wants? And as soon as he spoke, the beautiful young woman turned to the old man, said, you are the one I want to marry, because the others have gave me form, They gave me beauty and thinking, but you have given me the gift of myself. And when she said that, another miracle took place. The old man who was bent over straightened up. His gray hair turned black, and he became a young man. And so the two, hand in hand, went off, talking to one another through the forest. And where they went, I do not know. But I do know that the other three men watched them disappear into the distance, into a brand new story. Thank you.
Norman. I need to be traveling and looking for a woodcarver, a tailor, and a scholar, and
Right.
a young woman. And I need to give that answer, and that will give me the gift of youth back again and a bride. Fantastic.
I did. Yes.
So, yeah. So I think some people might be very upset if I just disappear searching. Louis, did you enjoy tonight?
Yes, I am. I'm Norman. I love your stories.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you.
I'm glad you did. I was.
That's right, Norman.
Fantastic. Now, what we have coming up.
Now,
this is important. This is important. On Sunday night, we have at 6 o'clock UK time, we are rocking the Casbah, which is, and there's going to be, I forget which riad are on there, will be storytellers, that we will be visiting a riad, one of the riads that is supporting us for the International Marrakesh Storytelling Festival. We will, of course, be collecting funds to make the festival happen, or to make it's going to happen anyway, but to make it even better. And Norman, of course, he's very kindly giving a raffle prize to those that contribute. But we mustn't talk about that tonight. But it is worth popping in. He has signed books by Duncan Williamson himself.
Yes, by Duncan Williamson.
Yeah. So, and after that, on Tuesday, of course, we have our fantastic young storytellers, and that's 5 o'clock. It's an hour earlier. That's 5 o'clock UK time, and that's any storyteller under under 18 and under.
18 and under.
18 and under. And Alicia is going to stay 18 forever, so we can keep her on that. And then and Friday, and this is a particular interest to Louis, we have Shelley Verma, who's an Indian storyteller, and Baba Yaga has just put in the chat that 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is 6 o'clock in the evening, Greenwich Mean Time. Now, I'm not sure if GMT or is that British Summertime. We're on British Summertime still, BST. So your UK is, but we'll check with that. Check wherever you are. 1300 hours Eastern Standard Time, Canada. There is the Baba Yaga concert, and Louis, do you know who Baba Yaga is? Baba Yaga.
Baba Z.
No, it's not Baba Z. It's Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is a Russian witch, and she lives in a hut on chicken's legs, and the hut moves round on the chicken's legs. And I'll tell you what, Louis, I was last Friday, I met not a Baba C, but I met a Baba Z, who was the Babas.
Oh my goodness!
There's Babas everywhere. Baba Yaga, Baba C, Baba C. There's almost a song coming there. Right, I'll give up. But anyway, there's the Zoom link is up here, but look it up, Baba Yaga concert, and just look it up on Baba Yaga concert. If you put up Baba Yaga concert on Google, I'm sure it'll pop up somewhere. Anyway, check that out. Check all our stuff that's coming out. And we'll hope to see you again sometime. Thank you very much. You have all been magnificent. A big round of applause for Norman Perrin. See you. Enjoy your swim, Louis. Bye.
You know where I will tell Papa C something. Papa C?
Yes, sir. Have a fantastic Friday, Louis.
Papa C, I will ask you something.
I'm about to end the meeting.